My name is Andy King, and this is the Small Business Phoenix Rising. And our crusade is to provide small business owners the tools, insights, and mentoring needed to get through this tough time and back to being successful and profitable. That's what we're all essentially shooting for. With that being said, let's just do a little bit of an update as far as Texas reopening. There's some exciting things. This Friday, restaurants are able to go up to 50% capacity. So if you guys haven't had a chance to go out and eat, please do so. It's kind of a fun thing to go out there and support the local market. Support these local businesses. I think most of us during this time have done a lot of takeout, but at this point we can actually go in there and kind of sit down and actually eat. The other thing that, at least for me, and this is just my opinion, but I think the tide is turning on businesses. Now, I'm not talking about Texas because Texas is very pro-business, but watching what's happening up in New Jersey and a few of these other blue states, business owners are really kind of stepping up and saying, hey, you know, we want to open, we're going to open, we're going to be safe. And eventually here, you know, I think things are going to be somewhat back to normal. You know, look towards July, August is my prediction on that. So anybody seeing anything out there that they want to comment on in regards to businesses opening back up? Is everybody open right now that's on this call or on this Zoom meeting?
Well, I am.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's been kind of a good thing. You can probably see my 14-year-old daughter in the background. Now that school's out, we're running basically a sweatshop. We've got all our doing stuff, and you know, we're making more money now than we did before. You know, I feel like we're kind of running the family farm, you know, back in the 1800s. So anyway, so it's a good thing that we've got Adam Koch today. He's actually going to talk about cybersecurity and some of the things that we can do to with our businesses to make sure that they're safe and protected. So with that being said, Adam Koch's a good friend of mine. I've known him through BNI, which is a networking group. Got to know him there, and Adam does a real nice job, always staying on top of trying to make sure that his businesses are fully protected, which is what insurance is all about, is making sure that you're protected against all these risks that potentially can be out there. So today, without any further ado, Adam Koch, take it away.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you, Andy. Hey, guys, I appreciate you guys stopping in today and kind of chatting with us. There's only a few of us on the call, so it's going to be rather informal. If you've got questions along the way, go ahead and pipe up and ask. This is not a formal presentation. This is something that, in trying to figure out exactly how I wanted to approach today's topic, you know, I kind of wanted to make it something that's kind of relevant to what's going on right now. You know, I told Lenora that earlier a little bit that we've got this thing called the new normal, and I refuse for it to be a new normal. I want it to be more of a temporary normal, if that makes sense. And so I thought about things like specifically for business and insurance, and something that's not going to make your eyes totally glaze over, because I promise you, I can bore you to death with insurance talk. But one of the hot topics is business interruption, and I wanted to keep it more positive than business interruption insurance. So I kind of want to hit some of the things that are going to really impact your business, at least more so right now than it will later, maybe. So Andy, if you'll go ahead and advance me a page here. So what we're talking about here is a new economy. It's a new exposures in the world that we're in right now. We're seeing a big business shift, a big business shift in the way that we're doing business. So there's the actual idea of a brick and mortar seems to be going by the wayside for a lot of retail, even a lot of service industry, and heck, people in my industry, in the insurance world. We're seeing a lot of them are really pushing back against the idea of having to have an actual brick and mortar office. And in doing so, what that means is that there's a lot more people working from home, and there's some unique cyber risks that come along with that. Man, there's public access to pretty much everything. So we are on the web. And I say we, I mean me, I mean you, all of us, we're sitting here on the web. And so there's a lot of entry points. There's a lot of exposure for us here. Websites particular are, 1.5 billion websites, and that's billion with the B. And it's just going to keep going. Now, some of those are not very good websites because they haven't talked to my buddy Andy, but some of them are really good websites out there, and some of them have the right type of security, but you cannot protect everything. Andy mentioned something a little bit ago. He says to be fully covered as a business, and I'll be honest with you. It's very difficult for me as an insurance professional to fully cover your business. There's always going to be gaps. There's always going to be things, but we want to hit the things that are going to take you out of business pretty quick. So if it happens today, we want to make sure that there's at least a plan or there's something in force that's going to take care of you. Now, unfortunately, we're seeing kind of the opposite of that with business interruption. And we can certainly discuss more on why that is later. And if you want to have a individual conversation on that, I don't mind doing so. But there are reasons business interruption is not backing you up right now when it comes to COVID or more pandemics or virus. So Andy? All right, so you've got a number of economic exposures out there, and that includes, trademark, copyright infringement. Remember, we're talking about the world of cyber liability. So we're talking about the things that are going to be electronic on your computer. But that doesn't mean just what people can get from you. It's also what you do out there in the world. So you're talking about defamation. Well, man, a lot of people are getting on Facebook and people are getting sued because of what they're saying on Facebook, or they feel like you infringed on their intellectual rights by that post, that picture that you posted, and again, I'm talking to the choir for some of these people. I know Andy specifically, when I was working with him on some website development, he made sure that every picture, everything we looked at, the licensing was free and clear, and that's incredibly important because if you don't, you can find yourself in a lawsuit. Now, sometimes that's intentional because you're just a bad actor out there. Sometimes it's totally, it's completely an accident. It's not something you intended to do. You thought you went through the correct steps, and now you find yourself on the other end of an attorney asking for money. That's where an insurance program, if it's put together correctly, will work. Andy, next. All right. So actually, I think we went one page too many, Andy. We missed one there when we're talking about, we talked about the new exposures. You're missing a page, Andy. All right, well, I'll just talk about it. So again, when we're talking about new exposures, there's some weird things afoot, my friend. A lot of people will think a lot of this stuff will be covered under their standard general liability, their business policy that they bought. And these type of policies are usually completely silent when it comes to cyber, or it will specifically say if there's a data breach, there's no coverage here for you. So if you're brought into a lawsuit because of that data breach, there's nothing in there. Data theft is incredibly commonplace. It's something that's happening all the time. You do not have to be a big company like Target. Target got nailed not too terribly long ago. I guess it's been a few years now. There's been a lot of other experience, one of the more recent ones, of the big companies that have been hacked. And what that basically means is somebody got a hold of somebody else's personal identification. It could be their name, it could be their address, it could be their social, it could be the date of birth, it could be all of that or just a few parts of that. Anything that's personally identifiable, a business has a specific responsibility to take care of that information. And that's not just what's on your computers, but also what you may have on your desk. If you have, if you have paper files, you have mailings, things like that, you have a responsibility to your customers, to your clients, to make sure that you are taking care of their data correctly. And you do not have to be a big business. You can be a very small business. You can be a medium-sized business. In fact, small businesses seem to be targeted significantly more often than the big businesses. And the reason for that is, one, there's a whole lot more smaller businesses, but two, usually their firewall protections, the actual, the programs, the systems they have in place aren't as
Hey
sophisticated.
Craig, Stephen Ennigenberg, Valiant Truck and Trailer. How you doing?
Hey, man.
I'm doing pretty.
All right, we got him muted.
So I'm not sure if he was answering a phone call or asking a question. So, essentially, where was I on that? Okay, so small business. You do not have to be a big business. Small businesses get targeted. We don't have the same type of policies, procedures, everything that goes along the lines there to protect our stuff. And so I'll use myself as an example. I remember the date clearly. I was going golfing with some friends on May 8th of 2019, and all of a sudden my phone was blowing up. Apparently my office, one of my account managers had a breach, had a data breach on her email system. Now this is through Microsoft. So they went through a lot of layers to be able to add in the redirects. They were able to get a hold of her email system and send out a ton of phishing emails. And look, this was not something that was an automatic computerized thing. They specifically targeted us to be able to access our list of clients. So luckily, nothing occurred with it. Nothing as far as anybody losing any money, anybody's data was actually, other than an email address, was actually hacked or used or anything along those lines. But we had a policy that responded for our clients to make sure that if there was a breach, us as a business would be okay, but so would they. So again, it comes back to that responsibility. You don't have to be a very big business to become that target. But one of the biggest things, the newest exposures out there, is what's dear to all of our hearts right now. Our favorite friend, our favorite family member, and that's COVID-19. One of the most disruptive things that we've ever come across here. But with COVID, what that's done is that's taken a lot of our normal operations, where we may have great security and great policies and procedures right here in our office. But now that everybody's working off-site, we're working on our personal computers. We're working on our kids' laptops, anything like that, and they don't have the same firewall protection. You may be accessing through your VPN, but the actual access into your computer that you're using may be wide open. So what I've heard from a number of different carriers, including the ones that I deal with for cyber liability and data breach, is that the exposure, one, has gone significantly higher, but so are the claims. The claims are through the roof right now. And what that basically means is a customer has experienced a loss. They've experienced a data breach. And so COVID has created some really, really unique issues, which is why I refuse to call it the new normal. I want it to go back to normal, so things are at least predictably safer, I guess. So Andy, you found my screen. Where'd you do? Did you put it in the wrong order or something?
I just waved the magic wand and it reappeared.
Fantastic. All right. So I'm not going to go through every single one of these things, but some of the on these pages, but take me to one that's titled System Failures. Andy? So these are some of the things that can typically happen to a business that can put them out when we're talking about data breach, or we're talking about a cyber liability issue. And one of those obviously is a virus attack. And one of the biggest things you see out there right now are these crypto lockers. What they're doing is if you click the wrong thing on your computer, and sometimes you don't have to click jack squat, and you all of a sudden you got to sit in there. And what happens is it locks your computer down, and guess what? You get this neat little email or pop-up or say, and if you give us, $60,000 in Bitcoin, or I don't know if that's dollars or however they, whatever they call a Bitcoin these days, then we will unlock your computer. It's called ransomware. And there's been school districts, even here in Texas, that have been completely locked down. There's a big run on it in municipalities. So your small governments, again, I talk about the small governments. Big governments seem to be protected pretty well. The small guys they're just kind of running pretty loose. So they're getting hit with this, and about 50% of the time, I think is the number, you actually get to, if you pay the ransom, you get your stuff back. The other 50% of the time, they never respond, and you've lost that equivalent of Bitcoin. So, and they like Bitcoin because guess what you can't do with Bitcoin? You can't track it. You can't trace it. So it's a great thing for illegal activity. The other one is physical damage or interruption to the servers themselves. So you could have a specific risk if there's a fire that's in your location, and you lose data that way. There could be some liability because maybe in my case, I'm not able to produce the right equipment or the right certificate of insurance for a company. They may end up losing out. They may end up losing business. And I'm talking about my customer. They may end up losing business. And the result is I am responsible for that loss of business, and I could be brought into a lawsuit because of that, just because I had a fire and it destroyed my computer. So there's a lot of different ways of that occurring. It also happens to do if your system is stolen. So if somebody comes and takes somebody breaks in, steals your server, that's another way of interruption too. And if there's a data breach as a result of that. The other one is also if they actually take the physical file off your desk. Again, you're supposed to have a responsibility to of your client's information to make sure it's protected. If you're not doing so correctly, there's a huge liability. And then natural disasters, hurricanes, floods, COVID, whatever you want to call a nat. I don't know if COVID's a natural disaster or not. I think it's there's different theories on that, but it's going to fall in that realm. So the same way you'll lose your equipment because of that natural disaster. All right, what we got next? So you also have to, hang on, I'm got it on mine too. So here, all right, so policy or privacy violations. So it's not only your employees that can claim that their privacy rights were I guess, what's the word I'm looking for?
Violated.
Violated. I like that word. All right, we'll go with violated. Thank you very much. Not only were their rights violated, but so were the employees who violated somebody else's privacy. So there can be a lot of cross liability, a lot of cross issues there to where you can be sued by your employee or you can be sued because of your employee. Again, the type of insurance we're talking about is a cyber or data breach policy that would make sure that if those instances do occur, there's at least what's called a duty to defend, that insurance carrier is required and obligated to defend you if those claims come up, whether you do anything wrong or not. All right. I mentioned a little bit about social media earlier. So when we talk about social media, a lot of people are on social media. They're on Twitter. They're on Facebook. Our Facebook account for the business is incredibly active. I'm pretty active on Facebook. I don't care anything about Twitter, to be honest with you, but apparently there's a lot of people that do. Instagram, there's a lot of other things on there. So if you were to accidentally, so I'll use an example I saw just the other day. Got a good dear friend of mine that I had to send a message to. He's not a client of mine, but he was very, very proud of a big check that he had just gotten. So he posted a picture of the check. And that included that customer's routing and account number on there. And that is incredibly dangerous. And he didn't mean anything by it. He was just really excited. And unfortunately, that's the type of stuff, the misuse of social media, something like that could get him in a ton of hot water. And I've seen it on multiple times. From other people, in the last 4 or 5 years, I've seen maybe 6 or 7 routing and account numbers from people. You got to take care of it. You don't want to put your customers' information. You don't put your information out there. Heck, if you're selling a ticket to the to a Texans game, don't post the barcode either, because I can use that to and I'll get a free ticket for it if I were that type of person. So anyway, so it isn't just the information like that that you accidentally put on there, but let's say that somebody considers what you just said to them as slander, libel, inaccurate, and as a result, they lose business. They can come back and and precedent's been shown that they can use that as a reason to actually file a lawsuit. Whether or not the lawsuit wins or not, well, what do you do when you get sued? You got to have an attorney, right? If you don't have the right protection, you don't have the right insurance, you get to pay for that attorney fee all by yourself. All right, next. So what we're talking about when we talk about cyber liability is we're talking about any business that has an online presence or is on social media, that has paper files, that has a computer that might be connected to the internet, has a computer that might not be connected to the internet. Sounds like pretty much any business out there. You all have a cyber risk. I mentioned it for us when we had our emails, when one of our email systems infiltrated. If a customer had lost money off of that, we'd have been in trouble. We'd have been liable for it. Ultimately, we may not have to pay a whole heck of a lot more money, but the reputation, the hit to our reputation could have been significant. The actual money we would need to pay to be able to defend that could be significant. If we needed to, for every one of those customers, if we were required to set them up on a 1-year monitoring service, that could be pretty costly for as many people as it went out. I didn't have insurance on all of that. It could have been really significant for me. Since I did have insurance on it, we had a deductible. Insurance program took care of it. They saw that I did everything right, that I wasn't trying to cheat a system or do it wrong. And so they ended up picking up the exposure without any issue. So a few of the intangible economic losses, I talk about that. You're going to lose money, not only in your reputation, but if your homepage is gone, people can't find you. If you have a total network failure, well, if our network fault goes down, our phone systems, our email systems go down. People can't contact us. So there's a loss of revenue and income there. There's restoration costs that come into it. So it's not just the indemnification of the other client that may have lost money, but you've got to rebuild your systems and you need to recover yourself. So there's there's one of the big one I hear from a lot of our contractors or from our larger suppliers is somebody submitted a fraudulent purchase order. They sent it out and all of a sudden they didn't get paid on what they should have got paid on. If the policy's put together correctly, you can actually have coverage for those fake orders as well. Because even though it's considered theft, a lot of your property policies will not pay for that type of issue. We're talking about viruses. Now, unfortunately, we're not talking about COVID. We're talking about computer viruses that can come in there. We talked about the crypto lockers. You're done. The industrial espionage. Apparently, that's a big issue with certain countries right now. So ultimately, all of that is kind of something that we're going to look at. Every little cyber policy can be a little bit different. The policies I typically look at for small business are going to be incredibly comprehensive. We're not going to look at the policy that'll be added to your current general liability policy, because whether it's and this is not a detriment to any of these guys, but whether it's Hartford, Liberty Mutual, Travelers, any of these big names or even these small name carriers that you know of that write business insurance, their little cyber liability endorsements are not very good. So we would do a monoline program, and the premium you pay is based off of your revenues. So the more revenue you make, the more exposure they expect you to have, and the higher the premium. Now, another secondary is what are your controls in your procedures? Do you work behind a firewall? Do you have, triple, double, quadruple authentication? Is it one, how are you protecting that data? And if you're not doing a very good job, then they will charge you more for it too. So not just the revenues. So really that's kind of the gist of it. There's a lot of different things that come on here. There's not much more that I'm really worried about talking about covering on this little seminar, I guess you want to call it. There's a few things to point out. I mentioned earlier the word duty to defend on any insurance program. And I don't care if we're talking about cyber liability, we're talking about general liability, we're talking about commercial auto, whatever it is that you're using to protect your business. Ultimately, what we want to look for is a duty to defend. And what that means is that insurance carrier has a duty and obligation to cover you should you have a loss. And if the agent has done their job well enough, if you come out with a liability claim, somebody sends you a letter from attorney that says, hey, we're suing you for whatever, we want to make sure that there's that duty to defend, because your attorney costs are going to be some of the biggest things and some of the biggest worries and some of the biggest things that are going to keep you up at night as well. Once you get that letter, if you know you got somebody backing you up and you're not going to have to shut your business down because of that claim, whether you did anything wrong or not, then that's hugely important. We also want to make sure policy covers punitive damages as well, because even though, again, you may not have done anything wrong, you may have done something wrong, and as a result, you have a governing body that assigns a punitive damage. Maybe it's the court, maybe it's a licensing board, something along those lines. We want to make sure that, again, some of those damages can be significant. If the court comes in and says, hey, you owe $20,000 punitive, or you owe $1 million punitive, we want to make sure that there's a policy in place that's going to cover that. We want to make sure that as a business owner, you get to stay a business owner after something stupid happens, whether, again, your fault or not. Ultimately, that's really it. I know it's a real high level view. It's really hard to get into anything in about 30 minutes. There's a lot of different elements that come into there. I'm not one to scare the ever living phooey out of you like some of these other cyber liability or cyber crime guys. I've got some computer guys that's all they deal with. And I tell you what, every time he comes on board, and he kind of shows me what's going on from China and Russia and how they're hacking us, scares the ever living phooey out of me, and I never want to access my bank account from a computer again. But we all know you have to, and at times money can get stolen from accessing those computers. So it's incredibly important to have the right protection, the right coverage, because we've got to go about business. We can't live in fear. But we need to make sure that we're doing the best thing for our customers, but we want to do the best, and we want to do the best thing for us as well. So I do have a very large cybersecurity planning guide and a exposure scorecard. And what that scorecard is, that I can send you out if you're willing, is just a way of kind of looking at your overall cybersecurity risk. And the more points you have, the higher your exposure, the more likely you are to eventually need a program before long that's going to make sure that you are protected in your business. So I can send both of those to you. The planning guide's 45 pages. Again, a lot of it talks about your internal processes, how to train your employees. It's quite extensive. So if you want to see a copy of that, I'd love to send it out to you. All you got to do is just let me know, send me your email, or Andy can send me an email, whoever that can send me an email, and I'll make sure that you get a copy of it. And with that.
Hey, Adam, can you do some questions?
I can. What you got?
Okay, so I've got a friend of mine, a buddy of mine, and one or two of his accounts got hacked yesterday. And so he went into his passwords there on Google Chrome, and apparently he had 62 accounts with the same exact username and password. So the first question is, first of all, is that bad? And
Probably.
second part of the question is, what do you recommend for, and that friend of mine is actually me. So I'm not, I'm kind of being very serious about it, but the reality is that you have all these like sites that you belong to, like booking.com all these consumer type things, has nothing to do with business, but you just accumulate Hotwire, Kayak, all this stuff, especially traveling. What is kind of the best strategy on that? Because it seems like, we have user and passwords out there everywhere, but it's almost like impossible to remember every single password that goes to every single username.
So that is a fantastic question. And to be honest with you, the best way you can do it is to have a password keeper of some sort, something that's highly encrypted, and just forget what it is you put in it, unless it's something that you go to all the time. Like I've got the same thing. I've got 70 or 80 different, logins and websites just for the agency. And so we try to, what we do is we actually change our passwords fairly regularly. But man, I can't remember them all. There's no way and I may access a carrier once every 2 months. There's no way I'm remembering it then. So there's a number of programs out there that are highly encrypted, that you can put on your phone, you can put on your computer. Again, they've got to be quality. You don't want, and you might actually have to spend money on it. The free ones are maybe a couple of gaps and holes in coverage in there. But ultimately, you want to have something that's going to be, 6, 7, well, not 6, 8, 9, 10 characters. Obviously, I'm not telling anybody that they already know.
Don't use password as your password.
Don't use password 1, 2, 3. Don't use my son's birthday. If you know my son's birthday, you and I are about to talk. You want to have special characters in there, but here's the deal. Not all companies you deal with are going to require special characters. Not all companies. I've got one company that if I put a exclamation or an at or a dollar, they'll kick it out. They only want letters and numbers. I don't really like that, but that's their process. I would try to be as random as possible, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So, but even then, there's still no protection. But if you have the same password on 60 different accounts, it's already out there, dude. People already have access.
Wow.
So, heck, I lost control of my Netflix about 4 months ago. Apparently, somebody in Ecuador had been watching a lot of shows that I could not understand the language. So, that was fun.
Yeah.
I find at least with the online systems now, so for example, yesterday I bought a park pass for the state parks, and I had to create an account and a password. So, but at least nowadays, if you make up something and just type in crap and then just copy it for the re-enter, if you forget it, it's a lot easier nowadays to just click, I forgot my password, and just redo a new one. At least most cases that happens within 2 minutes time. But I mean, otherwise you're kind of screwed without having some kind of like you mentioned, a password keeper.
I agree with that. And I end up doing that a whole heck of a lot because I've got a variation of 8 or 9 different passwords that will vary a little bit. I'm not going to tell you any of them just, because that would go against everything I just said. But sometimes I forget which variation of this and that actually put in there. So
yeah,
if you forget passwords, as long as you got your email in there, right, you're good to go. Hey everybody, look,
Hey, everybody.
John Stacy.
Hey.
He needs a haircut too.
Yeah, bad.
Yep, we're
Real bad.
apparently we're social distancing.
Yep.
Well, good. Well, hey, thanks, Adam. That was some great information. It's such a big, huge thing. I mean, probably we all have stories of somebody that we know that's been hacked. One of them that I know is my wife's uncle owns or used to own a Yellow Pages company, and literally, I mean, we're talking about thousands and thousands. I mean, he owned like 5 or 6 regional phone books throughout the United States. And they got that email and said, look, you got to deposit $250,000 or you're never going to be able to get in. And luckily they had everything backed up in the cloud and they were able to fight it. But we've all heard stories like that. The reality is that we're all at risk with all this stuff. I mean, it's great to have the technology, but the downside to it is that this is the type of stuff that people can prey on. So thanks so much. We appreciate everybody that came out to Small Business Phoenix Rising. Our next meeting, we're doing these once a week now. So our next meeting is actually going to be on, well, shoot, if I can pull it up here. It's going to be next week, this day, Tuesday, on the 19th. We're actually going to have John Stacy, who's there in Adam Cook's office. And John, just real quick, what are you going to talk about?
Well, it's going to be a surprise, but I'm going to be talking about sausage, worst to first.
Okay, first to first. Okay. No,
So
good.
you'll get some more information about that, but worst to first.
Yeah, so John is an actual business coach. He has great stuff, great information. He was the 2019 Avid Coach of the Year, and he's promised us he's going to be the 2020. So
Let's have some fun.
He is guaranteed that, just like Michael Jordan guarantees that he's going to win a championship back in the day. John is doing it with 2020. So thanks so much for attending, guys, and we'll go ahead and end the Zoom call right now. Thank you.